Welcome to the Odd Life Podcast. That's AWED, which stands for Awake, Well, and Empowered. We're here to have conversations to inspire women of all ages to live odd AF. So thank you for joining me. Let's dig in. Hello, friends. How are we this week? Hope all is going well. Today in this episode, I want to talk about, as you can tell from the title, I want to talk about menopause. Yes, menopause. The subject we've all heard enough about, but yet, ironically, not enough. I do not remember my mom going through menopause. And I've asked her about it, and she doesn't remember going through menopause. Like, she doesn't remember anything about it. She had an IUD, so that may have something to do with it, but she doesn't remember any of it. And so I didn't have a mom to go to ask how all this went. And I think I was one of the first ones in my group of friends to start going through it. My sister was going through it. We're not super close. We don't talk a ton. So there really wasn't a conversation there. I would get little bits and pieces of information, but I was really kind of on my own, figuring it all out. All of a sudden, this wave of Gen Xers are going through it. And so here we all are trying to figure out what the hell is going on. We get talked about puberty. I know at least our kids got that conversation. I don't know if Gen X had that big of a conversation, honestly, now that I think about it. I remember having a health class. I think I was a sophomore in high school, and they go through the basic reproductive health. That's really it. So it really wasn't about puberty at all, about just how you get pregnant. And that's it. So I don't remember having the puberty conversation. I was so clueless about all of that stuff. My daughter was part of a brownie troop when she was growing up. That's the precursor to Girl Scouts. And they had a meeting one time. They got a chance to listen to someone talk about puberty, and they got a little booklet, and they had other books that they recommended and all this stuff. So they were well versed, I feel like, in puberty, like what's going to happen to their bodies. I feel like Gen X kind of got screwed on both sides. We didn't really understand puberty. All we knew was we got acne and got our period, and that's it. So now menopause is here, and we're still trying to figure out what the hell's going on. And I wanted to share the evolution of my menopause journey and the symptoms I've had and what I've been doing since, and perhaps what I wish I would have known back then and what I would have done differently. So this isn't just for women that are of my age. I'm 52. This is also for women who are younger, that are in that age group that maybe the next 5-10 years, it may start to happen for you. I don't even care if you're 25 years old listening to this. I think it's important to know what's coming down the road so you can prepare yourself and understand, okay, I've got this amount of time to do these things, or to have this, or to feel like this before things start to change. I think it's important to know what's coming. The hardest thing is we don't really know what's coming for us because it's all very specific to our own bodies, right? I may experience the beginning of perimenopause about age 45, and then I was 48 when I lost my period. You're technically not in menopause until you've had a whole year without your period. I was going to be 48 that year when I lost it. So I was 49 technically when I was fully in menopause. So to go back to the beginning of my journey, about 2017 is when I started to notice things with my period that were off, that were changing. I got a really heavy cycle one month, and then the other month was almost nothing. And that was a huge change because I was pretty steady Eddie. I was only on the pill for about 11 years. When my husband and I became really serious, and right before we got engaged, I got on the pill. So I was about 23. And then I was on it until 2004. We were trying to get pregnant, and I got off the pill and got pregnant. But then I miscarried in December 2004. Then we waited about 3 months, gave my body a chance to recuperate, and then got pregnant again. And that was successful. We had our child in December 2005. And then maybe 6 months after he was born, my husband got a vasectomy. So I never went back on the pill again. And that was wonderful to not have to go back on that thing. I absolutely love being off the pill. Being on the pill was horrible. I felt numb. Sure, I could predict my periods, but I just didn't feel like truly me. And being off of it has been great. And so I realized my cycle was pretty even. I didn't have a lot of issues. I maybe get a slight headache before my period started. There's really not a whole lot that I had going on. Maybe the occasional acne would pop up, but that was about it. So I had it pretty good. So when things were changing, the concern went up like, what is this? I had no clue that this was the first indication that things were changing. I was possibly in perimenopause. Not a clue. So I went to a naturopath for two reasons. I wanted to understand my body better, get some tests done, find out if I was lacking anything, any vitamins, if things were working properly, all my systems were working right. And funny thing is, I didn't even know where to start. I had a gynecologist I would go to every year for my annual exam, but that's the only doctor I went to go see. I really had gotten away from Western medicine and how they handled things. If you've listened to the very beginning of my podcast, my season 1, I talked about my health journey a little bit, about where it all started and how it did not serve me at all. And I knew there was a better way. I knew that I needed to know more information, like what's going on in my body. What am I lacking? What do I need more of? How can I make my body work in the most optimal way? And I felt like going to someone that's either a functional medicine doctor or a naturopath would be the right place to start. So my next step was, okay, who can I go see? I found a naturopath actually that was also a gynecologist. So I ended up going to her. This was back in 2017 when my period started to get a little wonky. So that also was another push to go see somebody. We talked a lot about seed cycling and trying to find a way to balance my hormones better. We even tried tweaking my diet a little bit to help with balancing hormones that way. It helped a little bit, but not really. Like my body was going down a path and it was going down no matter what. And other things that we did in the naturopath's office was I had a body scan done. You have your hands on a metal plate and you have electrodes on your forehead, and it sends a signal through your body and lets me know what's struggling. And my liver was showing signs of struggle. Back then, I was still drinking. I was doing more of a keto diet. I was doing bulletproof coffee like crazy in the morning. So a lot more high fat, a lot of things that were causing a lot of stress on my liver. The liver's also where your hormones get processed. And who knows what was happening with all of that. I think what happens too is you have this massive estrogen dump for a little while and then it tanks. That's kind of the precursor to the whole menopause thing. I think you get a spike and then it takes a nosedive. And so 2017, we started to put things on the radar of what's going on. I need to be fixed. That was my thought process at the time. And also I started to gain a little bit of weight. Just a couple pounds for no reason. I think it turned into about 5 pounds initially. I was like, wow, that sucks. So whenever I'd go into the naturopath and get weighed, it's like, holy shit, another 3 pounds? Like, what just happened? Here I am doing keto, I'm intermittent fasting, I'm eating really healthy, going to the gym, doing all the things. And then in 2019, I rolled my ankle and it broke. I think I did have a stress fracture prior to that. I had gone skiing the previous year and I tweaked my ankle pretty hard. One ankle went this way, ski cut in front of it, and I kind of tweaked it. It was pretty sore the next couple of days. So I wonder if I didn't do something then, and it didn't take much to really make it go. This is how it happened. I had to go run an errand, and I realized I forgot my phone inside the house. I ran back inside the house, got my phone, and came boogieing around my car. And there was about a 2-inch lip from our garage floor to the driveway. I hit that, rolled it, and felt the snap. That sucked. I was 4 weeks in a boot, got an x-rayed again, and there was zero healing. None. So then they recommended, okay, let's just see how this goes. Another 4 weeks in the boot. If it's not healed, then if it's gotten worse, if you feel more pain, then maybe we do surgery. So when I got done with that, it didn't feel bad. I could walk on it, but it was still not healed. The bone had separated like this. If you can't see, if you're not watching the video, it's just, it hung down and it needed to be pulled back up and reattached. And he was worried about it maybe severing completely and maybe doing some nerve damage. He x-rayed it. He said, it looks like it's okay. It's not fully healed, but as long as you're not in pain and it's not breaking off and causing more damage, I think you're okay. But there's indications that things were healing slowly. If I had a scratch or if I had some sort of injury, it would take a long time to heal. I felt like, okay, what am I missing? what supplements do I need to have to help? Like, I'm missing some sort of nutrient clearly if this is going on. And when I had a boot, it's also very flat. There was no arch in it, anything like that. So when I got done with the boot, bottom of my feet and my Achilles heel were super sore. Like first thing in the morning, I'm like, do I have plantar fasciitis? So then I did everything I could, rolled on a tennis ball, all kinds of stretching. I was doing physical therapy as well after getting out of the boot. So I was doing the right things, but the plantar fasciitis stuck around. And then my knees became more sore, moved into my hips, and then it moved into my lower back. So it took about, I don't know, a full year or so to make that progression. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm a mess. Nothing was at the same time. So it felt like I was just falling apart at different times and different things were happening. And none of it seemed to be part of the whole. Another thing that popped up were headaches. Hadn't had headaches in a long time. I used to get migraines as a kid. It was mostly because of the food I was eating. And I had one of the worst ones I ever had on New Year's Eve from 2019 to 2020. We had a great dinner planned. It was my daughter, my husband, and I, and that was it. We had steak and crab legs planned. I could not even stay up. I went to bed early. I was miserable, absolutely miserable. And it's a headache I've never had before. I don't know how to explain it. It was a different kind of headache. And that lasted almost the whole next day as well. It was bizarre. So 2020 was a rough year for me. I had my implants taken out. So there was that recovery. I think that was episode 3 that I mentioned that. Starting to feel good. We went on a ski vacation with the kids. I wasn't going to go skiing yet. My ankle still wasn't feeling 100%. I didn't want to risk it. The implants, I was still recovering. I was just going to go out there and be with the family and hang out. Well, then, of course, COVID hit and everything shut down. And then it was probably middle of April that I missed my period and the hot flashes started and the insomnia really kicked in. I started to have some lack of sleep, but I think I contributed that mostly to me dealing with explant recovery. And lo and behold, night sweats, waking up middle of the night, having racing mind at nighttime before bed, all of that happened. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going through menopause. Prior to this, I had major spikes going on. Like libido went through the roof for a little while. My husband's like, I don't know who this is, but this is fantastic. And I don't know. I don't know what's happening. This is great. Hey, let's go. And then all of a sudden it took a nosedive. Had no interest whatsoever. So that was interesting. And the mood swings were crazy. I had never, ever felt panic before or anxiety for the most part. And that became a staple. That became an everyday thing. All of a sudden, I would feel this almost like a zing, and the panic would set in, almost like an adrenaline rush. Like I felt like I was getting pushed with adrenaline. You know how you're in the car and you have to slam your brakes on real fast because someone pulls in front of you? You get that little surge of adrenaline. That's what I would get just randomly. And then I'd have this panic or anxiety that would hit. And it wouldn't take much. It would take the smallest thing to cause it. A thought, watching a show that was maybe a little bit violent, couldn't do it anymore. It would set that off. So all of a sudden I was very aware of cortisol levels and, okay, this doesn't feel good. My body was sending me physical signals of what was happening inside. So that was interesting. Another thing happened crazy in 2020 was I had 2.5 weeks of where I could not eat at all. I really wasn't nauseous. The desire to eat was completely gone. And if I tried to eat, I could probably have a few bites and then that was it. Then it would make me feel sick or feel really bloated and then I was done. But I had zero appetite. It was the craziest thing. And there's one thing that happened, never have happened since. My son was playing baseball, playing in a big tournament, and we wanted to go see these Indian mounds. They were outside of town. I had something to do that day. We're driving through Cartersville, and this wave of nausea hit me. So you've got to pull over right this second. I'm going to throw up in the car if you don't pull over right now. He barely got to the curb. I opened the door, and I threw up, and it was almost like dry heaving. All I had was bile, and that was it. So it wasn't like I had anything in my stomach. It was the weirdest thing. And then I had this wave of how the flu feels if you have such a bad fever that you feel out of it. That's the way I felt. We turned back around, went back to the hotel. If I was driving a car and I had that happen to me, I would have gone in the back seat and laid down for a while. I could not have driven. It was wild. And then I ended up getting back to the hotel, taking about a 2-hour nap, woke up completely fine, still couldn't eat a whole lot. It eventually came back. Like I said, it was like 2.5 weeks that it lasted. And then that's it. So I don't know if that was menopause related as well. Like there was some shift that was happening in my body. And then I want to say it was January 2021, the lower back pain kicked in. We had just been on vacation, slept in this big, wonderful king size bed, fine for the whole week, came back to our bed, an instant back pain. I was in it 24/7 and I had no idea why. Initially I thought, oh, our mattress sucks. We need to get a new mattress. We got the new mattress. Still had lower back pain. And then I thought, okay, I haven't been doing a lot of ab work lately. We've been not really at the gym. I've been neglecting my abs. Maybe that's a big part. And I did relieve a lot of it when I did kick that back in. However, just the switch that happened with my lower back was insane. It wasn't because of an injury, didn't do anything. I wasn't lifting a ton of weight, all that. So that took me out too for a long time. I couldn't lift a lot of heavy weight. I couldn't squat. I couldn't put anything on my shoulders because it would feel like my back was being compressed. I did go to the chiropractor and I did realize I had a little mild scoliosis. So we worked a lot on that. I had symptoms that were building up and signs that things were happening, but nothing seemed to be tied to one specific reason why. It just was here, and there. And I thought I was losing my fucking mind. And then I started to listen to more conversations regarding menopause and realized what's happening. When you lose estrogen, you lose your flexibility. Tendons get tight and harden, and everything feels harder to move. So first thing in the morning, that's why my ankles and my feet hurt so bad. Then as I got moving, I could move fine. It was just the first thing in the morning. When it stopped moving, it tightened up. And it took all day to get that to lubricate again. I thought, hell no, this cannot be my life. I am 49 years old. Are you kidding me right now? So things I wish I would have known and would have done differently prior to all of this. Number one, to be educated about what menopause is and what the signs are that you're starting to go through it. I would have done regular hormonal testing back in my 30s and 40s to make sure things were all good there. And then as soon as things start shifting and changing, you're going to know because you're checking your hormone levels and you know what's normal for you. And when it goes abnormal, all right, that's a sign. Things are changing. Let's start paying attention to these things. And I would have got on HRT back then. And I know HRT gets a bad rap because of that one study gazillion years ago when our parents were younger and they were going through menopause and they were told hormone replacement therapy gives you breast cancer. That has been debunked. That study was a very, very small study, and they did not take into account anybody's genetic makeup or background or history of cancer. It was completely ridiculous. It's been debunked by other doctors, urologists, OBGYNs. It's not valid. And there's so many more benefits to actually having HRT. And of course, that's BioIdentical, not the other crap. The things that they had back then were not BioIdentical. They were using, I want to say it was horse urine, something insane for hormone replacement therapy. So now it's BioIdentical. They can use things like wild yams that our body knows how to use and to replace what we're losing. And I would have started way back then. So I would have avoided all this pain and misery and having now to rebuild it all. We lose estrogen, we lose our flexibility, we start to lose our skin elasticity, we start to lose muscle. There's a lot of things that are happening. And if I would have started that back then, I would have been so much better off than where I'm at now. I gained probably 20 pounds over the course of the last 7-8 years. I quit alcohol. I ate better than ever. I rarely do processed food. I don't drink pop. I don't do any of that kind of stuff. I do splurge once in a great while. It's the pizza. It's the burger once in a while. And the weight was just creeping. It was so frustrating because nothing I was doing was working. And I wish I would have done HRT back then, the very beginning when it was starting to change. I had a young naturopath. And maybe that was her way of trying to balance things naturally regardless. But we did eventually get there that perimenopause is probably in the picture here. Because what we were trying to do really wasn't working. It was too far gone and just wasn't enough. I had frozen shoulder at one point. I literally could not raise my arm above this. I could not throw a ball if my life depended on it. I would have had to throw with my left arm. If I had to save my child by throwing a baseball with my right arm, would not have saved my child. Could not move my arm. It was so painful. Couldn't lift weights on the side. I couldn't do any shoulder presses. I could only do a little bit of curls and that's it. Just frozen. Couldn't do it. So my symptoms, we'll just backtrack a little bit. Of course, lack of sleep, insomnia, the night sweats, hot flashes. That was during the day. I had major mood swings. I've never had suicidal thoughts, but I did have one time I was at the gym and I'll never forget it. I had just cried in the closet to myself about my life and how sad I was and my kids would be better off without me. That whole thing, I've never gone down that road in my entire life, ever. And I went to the gym and I was doing push-ups and I was crying. I could see the tears falling on the mat below me. Like, what the hell? I went to the gym to try and feel better. And I could not get past these thoughts. I had, again, low libido. Things weren't healing right. My lower back pain. I had plantar fasciitis. My skin elasticity was disappearing by the second. And there's another thing that happened too, that probably part of nature taking care of itself, but everything my husband was doing and saying was driving me crazy. It was one big ick. The way he was breathing, the way he was eating, the things he was saying. I mean, there was a lot going on in 2020, right? A lot going on in 2020. We were together all the time. And it was all the time in my face, this person being there all the time, no separation. And then I was going through this. And it was almost as if I was living with my biggest pet peeve. And I had to explain to him, I am so sorry. Everything's irritating. It's not you, it's me. But I need you to understand something, that I'm trying to get this under control. I don't know how, but until then, you just have to give me a bit of a break. Our lives aren't going to look the way they normally have. Like, I could easily sleep in another bedroom and be completely fine. I would actually prefer that. Thank you very much. When my husband got shoulder surgery last year, I did sleep in the room because he was miserable. He was always up and doing things and he was not sleeping really well. So I slept in the room. The best sleep I've had in a very long time. I get now why people had separate bedrooms years ago. Probably for a good reason. So you can't actually stay freaking married. But there was a big part of that I was just like, I want nothing to do with you. And then guess what? Got on hormone replacement therapy and oh, I liked him again. I enjoyed his company. He didn't drive me crazy. He wasn't all the icks combined into one person. I had been to a book signing a couple years ago about midlife. And the owner of the bookstore had said, I was an absolute bitch during menopause, an absolute bitch. And I got a divorce because of it. And once I got through it and on the other side, I apologized to my ex-husband. And now we're great friends. She's like, it was all me. I was just a mess. And I can easily see that. If you have never gone through it, it's hard to explain. Honest to God, getting on HRT saved my damn marriage. And this sounds horrible, but I contemplated every day, probably during 2020, 2021. Oh my gosh, am I supposed to be in this marriage? Am I supposed to be married to this man? I'm going down this path. He's going down this path. We're not seeing the same things. I was finding all these things to tell me you shouldn't be together. Your mind goes there, which is so messed up because you go down these extreme thought processes. I started to fantasize about having another life, living someplace completely different. I mean, I kind of still do that a little bit, but without somebody, like what my life would look like single, this whole thing. And I know it's because my brain was just messed up from all the hormone fluctuations. And since I've got on HRT, those thoughts, that's all gone. I mean, sometimes I still get an ick here and there, but that's just being married to somebody for 20 plus years. We're all going to have that. I'm sure he has plenty of icks about me too. So anyway, all that being said, I'm a huge advocate of getting on HRT. Do not wait till it's too freaking late. Don't wait till you hit menopause. Have the blood work done, get your hormones tested regularly. And then when things are shifting, have that conversation with your doctor and get on it. Plenty of people you can listen to. Kelly Casperson, she's got a podcast. I think it's called You're Not Broken. Mary Claire Haver, Dr. Jen White. She's here in Kansas City. Used to be Jen Suzuki. She was on my podcast early on in season 1. She has gotten her doctorate. She is big on helping women with hormones and helping them heal and not suffer. She's got a podcast as well, Inspire Health by Jen. I'll link this in the show notes, the one that I felt was really helpful. Lots of people out there talking about it now. I think Gen X is like, we're not dealing with this shit anymore. Hell no. What are we doing? What's happening? We dealt with enough growing up. We're not dealing with this now later in our life. We deserve a little bit of peace and joy. And menopause is not it. You can search menopause in all the podcast platforms, and there's probably a gazillion episodes to listen to. But I'll link to my favorite ones below in the show notes. So let's move on to the different methods of getting BHRT. I'll tell you what I did and where I'm at now. I've done pretty much almost all of them. I started out with vaginal suppositories. And the reason I did that was because it goes straight to the source. It was the cleanest. It was the easiest to start. You'd only use half a suppository at a time. What I didn't like about it, it was a bit messy, and I probably gained 5 pounds almost immediately. And that is one of the side effects with this vaginal suppository, is that it does tend to make people gain a little bit of weight. And I didn't need any more of that. So that sucked right away. However, it did help immensely. If you're traveling, you've got these suppositories made with like coconut oil and yam. It will melt. So you've got to keep them either on your person or some type of way to keep them cool if you're traveling. Can't be in a hot car. You don't have to keep them in a fridge at home, but if you were going to travel, you may want to put them in a fridge to keep them colder a little longer, but it goes straight to the source. It doesn't have to get processed through the liver right away. It goes right to the source and makes immediate impact. So good, but it had some downsides to it. And then I switched to the pellet to see if I like that. And the pellet is just like a grain of rice that is inserted into the very top of your gluteus maximus. And it sits just right under the skin and eventually dissolves. It passes into your bloodstream. The hard thing with that is you've got to get the amounts right because it's in there for 3 months. And if they're not right, you're stuck with whatever dosage you have for the next 3 months. They always can add a little bit more, but taking it out is pretty darn hard. They numb it, insert it, really quick incision. They put a little steri strip on top, heals up, but I don't know. I'm like, I don't want all these little scars all over my butt. I don't think I heal great. I tend to scar easily from any type of surgery. And it would be great initially. I'd feel great. And then towards the end, like the last 2-3 weeks, symptoms would come back. But I had to wait until that 3-month mark and then get more. And I just didn't love the process. So then I switched to shots. And this was a dosage I would give myself every week. I got the vials. I had syringes. And I would have my husband help me out. So it would be the shot in the top of the same place where the pellets would go. And that was fine, kind of. But I felt like it took a lot to feel what I needed to feel. We had to change the dosages quite a bit. And it took me quite a while to get it to feel like it was helping all the symptoms. And even then, I've learned that those things have to get processed through the liver before they get into your tissues. And I didn't love that it's taxing my liver. And so finally, I've moved on to the troche. And this is what Dr. Jen White recommends the most because it goes right into the tissue immediately. It's a little waxy square. They're little squares, and I break it in half, and I put it between my cheek and my gum and let it dissolve. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes to dissolve, maybe a little longer. And then they're supposed to wait another 15, 20 minutes before you have any liquids. That way everything gets fully absorbed and you're not washing it down your esophagus. So about a half an hour or so of having that in your mouth and then letting it all soak into your tissues. So what's good about that is it goes into your tissues, in your bloodstream, and then eventually it will make it its way to your liver. But by then, everything that needs to be taken out of it, for the most part, is where it needs to go. And the very last piece of it is going through your liver. So rather than the other methods, besides the vaginal suppository, the other ones are having to be processed by your liver because they go into your bloodstream and then the blood goes to the liver. And then that's when it finally gets processed and sent out to the rest of the body. And that's from what I understand that I've listened to. Again, I'm going to link the episode I listened to from Dr. Jen White. It's super helpful. Helped me understand that I think the troche is the way to go for me. I can easily adjust if I need to. I can pull back if I want to, add more, depending on my symptoms. And it's so easy. I can travel with it. It goes in my little fanny pack I have with me all the time. I can't leave it in the car. It doesn't really fully melt. It just gets really soft. So I can put it in the fridge, let it harden back up, and it's fine. But it's not as messy as the suppository, but it can be softened quite a bit if it's left in the sun or a hot car or whatever. So I always keep it on me if I'm traveling, or put it immediately in the hotel and leave it there rather than having it on me all the time. But that's easy to access and throw in every day. It seems like a lot. I put it one in the morning and then one in the evening. And it seems like a lot compared to the other things, versus once a week or every 3 months. But man, it feels so great to know that it's going where it needs to go. It's easily accessible by my body. Been amazing. I've loved it so far. So that's where I'm at. I've been doing that since middle of July. It's now middle of September, and I've loved it. We're getting there. We're figuring this all out. And where I'm at now versus where I started, light years difference in how I'm feeling. And there's so much research now about the benefits of having HRT and being on it for a long time that there is no reason why we shouldn't. It is a lifesaver. It's a marriage saver, that's for sure. And it is about our quality of life. And if it's not going to be detrimental, if it's not a risk for cancer down the road, or it's not going to cause other things down the road, why wouldn't we? And unfortunately, it's been so hard for women to get this as the first thing they go to. Oh, let's give you a melatonin for sleep. Oh, let's get you on an antidepressant. All these other things, rather than, oh, wait, let's just freaking test your hormones and see where you're at. Okay, guess what? You're in menopause or perimenopause. Let's get you back up to speed. And I don't know why that's so freaking hard and why women get dismissed about their health. And they know when shit doesn't feel right, we know something's off. What's going on? We want answers. And it's about slapping band-aids on symptoms, or even generalizing shit, or gaslighting us about what's really going on. And I hope that if you're younger, that you start to test yourself and see where you're at, making sure your hormones are where they're supposed to be. And when you start to get to the late 30s and early 40s, doing the things that are setting yourself up for success when you do start to have that hormonal shift: exercising, eating healthy, cutting out the alcohol, or cutting way back, because your liver will go through some major shit trying to deal with your hormones. If you're already giving it processed food and alcohol, you're only going to make it harder on yourself. So really getting things cleaned up in your lifestyle would help out tremendously. And you may even delay the process a little bit, because I don't know if the liver can't handle so much that all of a sudden it's like, forget it. I cannot recommend enough a cleaner lifestyle all across the board, and starting to prioritize your mental health. Because if you wait until you're actually in menopause or right before, it's going to throw you for a major loop, which is why I suggest testing the hormones prior to. So when things start to go awry, and you start to go a little cray-cray upstairs, you'll go, okay, this is it. Now I'm feeling it. And I get it. Let's take some action. It's just getting on a low dosage of hormones initially. It's all you may need, just a tiny bit. And then as things change again, you add a little more. You don't have to go, balls to the wall right out of the gate. You may just need a tiny bit of, estrogen, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's this. That's all you need. But really educate yourself early on about what is happening, what the different estrogens are. There's estradiol, you've got progesterone, you've got testosterone, all the different hormones that are going on in your body, understanding what they are and what normal levels are, and then what they do for your body. Having the understanding of what's going on with each specific hormone will help you understand, okay, this is why I'm feeling this way. This is why this hurts. This is why this is happening. And then address it immediately, rather than wait till it compounds in other things. Because if you wait too long, you let it all start to unravel, you're going to feel like you're falling apart. And then there's a feeling of hopelessness and despair, and it's just not necessary. You don't even have to go down that road. I wish I would have done that differently. I wish I would have had my hormones tested when I was normal. And so then when things went awry, I knew, okay, here we are. We're hitting perimenopause. Let's supplement with this small dosage and then work our way from there. That's what I would have done. Please know that you're not alone. You're not crazy. You're not falling apart. It's just your hormones. There's so much that our hormones control, unfortunately. So when the hormones go crazy, the body goes a little crazy. It goes a lot crazy, actually. And if you can start early, understanding how it's all working, what happens when you lose estrogen, what it feels like, what happens to the body, and know that it's so important to make sure those levels don't drop. If you can avoid all that, you'll be so much happier. And you may love menopause. I'm great now. I'm doing so much better. There's a lot of things I'm still working on and tweaking, but man, I am so far from where I was. And I love that we're having more of this conversation now. So I'm going to put things in the show notes of where you can start. Hearing more conversations regarding menopause, I think are really helpful, especially around BHRT. Understanding that it's not the devil. It's not going to kill you. It's not going to give you cancer. It's actually going to save your damn life. I promise. All right. That's my little journey through menopause and where we're at right now. And hopefully the things I've done and the things I've messed up on and the lessons I've learned will help you, because I don't want you to go through what I went through. There's no need. You may not need to go through all the steps I went through. You may not have any of the symptoms I had. Like I said, this is so unique to everybody, which is so hard, because what I went through, you may not be sleeping great. Big deal. If that's all that you get, God bless you. You are lucky. But for other people, they may have the extreme like I had, and it's tough. And you shouldn't have to go through this alone. There's all kinds of help and support out there for you. And I just want to make sure that you're aware of it and to start thinking about that now before it's too late. It's never too late. If you're already in the swing of it, there's help. So don't feel like you're all alone, and don't feel like there's nothing you can do, because there is. All right. Love you guys. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you found this episode either helpful, inspiring, entertaining, or just made you feel less alone, or maybe all of those things. If so, I'd love it if you'd share this episode with a friend, as well as on your social media. And if I dare ask for more, to rate and review the podcast on your favorite platform, especially Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You see, the more reviews we have, the more people we can reach, and the bigger the Odd Life community can become. You guys are the best. I can't wait to chat again next week, so we'll see you then.